That's good. Okay, so wonderful. So welcome everybody. Welcome to our kind of new YouTube approach here, and lovely to have you with us. Just getting used to it all. I may have heard me mention earlier on that I'm seeing that Taras is saying hello from Sonoma, California, Claudia from Mexico, and we have Stella from Mendoza, Argentina. And so Sol as well, Sol Ruiz. Welcome, Sol. Some good friends here, and Luis as well. Welcome, everyone. So Adriana from New Hampshire. Lovely to have you with us, Adri. And Luis from Colombia. So I'm just really thrilled to have such a worldwide approach here, because we're actually really moving into a very, very important part of life. In some ways, life itself. I'm thrilled to have with me today Caroline Gamble. Caroline Gamble is a yoga practitioner and a teacher, and with many years of experience, and particularly in her work with the breath, which is the subject of our conversation today. And delighted to be with Caroline. And so Caroline, why don't you just come on and just say hello, and I'll introduce you a little more.
Hello, everybody. I'm in Los Angeles and so thrilled to be spending the mid part of my day with all of you, wherever you are in the world. I feel we are connected. Connection is what I'm driven by. So this is a real gift to me. And thank you, Paul, for hosting it.
Oh, yes, my pleasure. And Lauren is saying, what the heck? I'll say hello from LA as well. And Speed from New Mexico. The reason I'm just doing all of this, because sometimes when I'm on a YouTube or online and people do this, I go, get over yourself. Why are you reading all these names? But I think that the absolute miracle of the communication that we have this day is actually worth featuring, that we can have and connect with people all over the world. And so thrilled that such an important subject. And I really wanted Caroline to be part of this, because it's really part of the Vital Self series. This is a class that we've been doing online, but we decided to open this segment up to the public at large because the subject is so important. Caroline has been a long-term student of yoga and has developed something she calls the breath method, which has its own website, which hopefully will have a link for you to connect with Caroline. Also, she's very generous in terms of communicating with people. So if you have a personal question for Caroline after this segment, please feel free to contact her. And she's very, very wonderful with getting back and assisting people. So I'm very thrilled to have her as well. And more about Caroline and what she offers later on, because there's certain skills that she brings to the table that I think you'll find very invaluable. And that's why we've just decided to have this relaxed conversation together. So one thing about Caroline that you need to know, she's a mother of two. So that puts her in the extremely busy category without doing anything else. And I have the highest admiration for any mother. And she, though, going to a little bit of her personal history, she was an advertising executive in London and then experienced burnout. And I want to talk about that with her later on, about what that was for her that led her on this yoga path. I've restrained myself from asking too many questions of Caroline when we've had private chats, because I've really wanted to dive in deep in this conversation so it'll be fresh for you. We haven't rehearsed, so all of this is just going to be very, very spontaneous, and your questions will be very invaluable to making this a very enlivening and useful conversation. But what I wanted to start off with, Caroline, is before we go into the depth and all of that, is that perhaps we can begin with the breath practice, just right off the bat, taking us into a short breathing practice. And here I would like you to consider, in all the experience that you've had and everything you know, if there was one thing you wanted to leave people with from your experience and sharing your knowledge, what would you want them to know? And I know this is a big ask, but what would you want them to know? And perhaps you could lead us in a practice that you could just say, this is what I want you to know more than anything. And if I wasn't going to say anything more to you, I want you to have this information because it's going to be valuable for you for the rest of your life. So a big ask, but I'll leave you with that.
Well, I love this ask, and I would be thrilled to do that. So our breathing has so much power to it. We breathe over 20,000 times each day. The average is about 25,000 times, which is too fast, but I will get onto that later. But each of those breaths has the power to nourish you or deplete you. Think about that. Knowing that blew my mind. Every breath we take has the power to nourish you or deplete you, because your breath has this fantastic ability to communicate to every other system of your body. How you breathe tells your heart rate, how fast to beat, your blood pressure, whether to be high or low, your immune function, whether to be in stress or in balance, your hormones, whether to be releasing or coming into regulation. Any part of your mental or physical system you could imagine is controlled by your breathing. Yet most of us breathe in ways that are dysfunctional. So I want you to know the 4 steps how to regulate your breathing. Don't worry about what dysfunctional breathing habits you might have. We again can talk about them later. These 4 steps are going to regulate your breathing, no matter where you are in the world, no matter your health profile. So let's do them together now. Start by sitting tall. That's really important. Lift up. I want you to connect with 2 points, the 2 most crucial points for your posture: the center of your chest and the back of your skull. Lift up through those 2 points. Lifting up through the center point of your chest and the back of your skull. At the same time, make sure your chin is slightly drawn in, so you're not projecting it, pointing it up towards the sky. Slightly drawn in, and your shoulders are feeling relaxed and soft and down. So immediately lifting up through the center of your chest and the back of the skull gets you into a better posture. Gives you more space in your body for better breathing. Now maintain that posture as we move through the 4 key steps of breath regulation. Number 1, breathing through your nose. We can go into the benefits later on in this conversation. But lips together, a soft smile on your mouth, feeling the air flow in and out of your body through your nose. Now, a way to help loosen the flow of air through your nose is aligning your tongue to be in its most optimal position. We don't often think about that. Lift your tongue up so that it rests against the roof of your mouth. Then let your tongue soften there, widen in a circular shape. So it's not engaged, pointing forward like an arrow. Instead, it's soft and spreading wide like a circle. And feel how this creates a subtle broadening in your soft palate and also through your airways, your nasal passage. The more you position your tongue up like this throughout your day, the more open you create your airways. That's the first step of breathing well. Through the nose with your tongue up and wide. Already, your breathing will have started to become more functional. Let's go further into step 2. You're sitting tall, and now you come down to your belly. The space below your navel and above your pubic bone, so that lower belly space. Let that space relax forward as you breathe in. Push it forward a little bit as you breathe in through your nose. And as you breathe out, pull your belly back a little bit into your body. Again, as you breathe in, push your belly forward as if you're creating a pot belly shape to your body. And as you exhale, pull the belly in. Now let go of that effort. And now as you inhale, just allow the belly to relax forward, reaching forward, expanding as you breathe in. And allow the belly to return backwards as you breathe out. Again, belly relaxes forward, expands as you breathe in. And returns back into your body as you breathe out. This is diaphragmatic breathing, the second step of breathing well. Let's move into the third step. So just as the front of your body now is moving optimally with your breath, the front of your belly is expanding forward as you breathe in, returning backwards as you breathe out. You want to bring the same motion into the back of your body. So connect with the back of your rib cage. And as you breathe in, the back of your rib cage starts to expand and stretch with this inflation of your lungs. And as you breathe out, the back of your rib cage starts to return in, relax into center. As you breathe in, there's an expansion through the front of your body and now the back of your body as you breathe in. And as you breathe out, there's a returning in towards your center through the whole 360-degree perimeter of your body. That is the third step of breathing well, breathing using more of the full lung capacity, feeling your breath move in the back of your body. So just to recap those first three steps, you're breathing through your nose with your tongue up and wide. You are breathing diaphragmatically, your belly expanding forward as you breathe in, returning back in as you breathe out. You're breathing full breaths using the back of your lungs, and you're feeling this in the movement of your rib cage, expanding back away from center as you breathe in, returning back into center as you breathe out. And the fourth step of regulating your breath to be your optimal breathing style is the quality with which you do those first three steps. So you can do those first three steps pushing and pulling your breath. But we don't want that for good breathing. Good breathing is effortless. So step 4 is refining your breath. Make it slower. Feel this in the flow of air in your nose. Feel this in the movement of your breathing body, the belly movement, the back of the rib cage movement. Your breath is slowing down. Now smooth your breathing, and again, feel this in the flow of air in your nose or in the movement of your body expanding as you breathe in and returning into center as you breathe out. Your breath is slow and smooth. Now make it steady. And you can imagine the flow of air moving in and out of your body. Let it be like a silky thread, a silky smooth thread moving in and out steadily so it becomes very subtle. And then finally, lighten your breath. Our breathing should be so light, the hairs in your nostrils barely move as you breathe. Breathe so lightly that there's no flaring to your nose as you breathe your breath in and your breath out. Breathe so lightly that your breathing is soundless. Somebody sitting right beside you could barely see you breathe, could barely hear you breathe. Those are the 4 steps to breathing well. Keep your eyes closed. Stay here for a few more breaths. When you breathe like that, no matter what imbalance you have in your body or mind, you shift into parasympathetic dominance, which is the rest and restore state for your body. So any imbalance you have, you start to heal that, you start to restore that, you start to equalize that by breathing in this way and maintaining it. Those are the 4 steps to breathing well, accessible to all of us. Opening your eyes, notice if something in you has shifted. It's okay if it hasn't. Keep breathing like that and you will gain more. And as we continue our conversation between Paul and I'm going to remind you of those 4 steps and remind yourself so you start to repattern your default breathing to be more functional like this. How was that for you, Paul?
Well, it was magnificent, I have to say. I'm very interested in people sharing the experience of that, because I think you took us through such a profound practice in such a short time. I'm so impressed with what you are able to share with us, and certainly feeling more relaxed. And I love the 360 degrees of the diaphragmatic breathing, which I don't think is stressed enough. I did want to say on the back breathing, I'm sure you found that a lot of people really don't realize that they can breathe into their back, or that the actual lung capacity is more in the back of our bodies than in the front of our bodies. And so what I was going to suggest, and please jump in here, is number one, that people could put their hands behind their back and see if they're actually feeling their breath just beneath the lower rib cage, or however far back you can get there. See if they can feel the breath. Or if they can't do that now and they still can't feel, one way to definitely feel it is to lie on one's stomach. And then when you breathe in, you'll definitely feel the back expand. And any thoughts on that, Caroline, in terms of the back breathing?
So many thoughts on that. I wanted to keep those 4 steps really succinct, but absolutely they are expanded. And when I'm working with someone to regulate their breathing, we flesh that sequence out to be 20 to 30 minutes. It could be an hour's long, to bring in these cues so that you can really feel each stage at an even deeper level. And we can do that later on in our conversation. If people would be interested in that, absolutely ask for that, send a question to Paul. But taking your hands to your body, what I love to instruct people to do is take your hands to your lower ribs. I'm going to sit up on this bolster so that you see my torso. Take your hands to your lower ribs. Feel around. We need to connect with our body. Dig your fingers into your rib cage. Can you feel the line of your ribs? And your thumbs are on your back, and you are feeling this sequence of bones like a spread hand. You get a sense of this cage of bones, these layers of bones called your rib cage. And then let your hands be still. Thumbs on your back, fingers pointed forward. Drop your shoulders. Again, connect with those 2 points. The center of the chest and the back of the skull, keeping your hands on the side of your body, just watching where I am touching myself. The back center of the skull and the center of your chest. Holding the side of your ribs, lift up through those 2 points, whilst keeping your chin drawn in. Now notice as you do that, you're going to pull your belly in. You're going to engage your abdomen. So an important part of this is to now keep sitting tall, but relax your abdomen and feel this down in your perineum. So your perineum is the base of your pelvis, the space between your anus and your genitals. Relax that as you connect with your breathing. And so now we can feel our diaphragmatic breathing under our fingertips, our belly expanding forward as we breathe in, and our belly returning into center as we breathe out. But further to your point, Paul, connect mostly with your thumbs. The movement of your back body under your thumbs, making sure everybody is seeing where my hands are, thumbs on my back. Connect with your thumbs, and you can walk your thumbs a little bit closer together on your back. Connect with your thumbs, the movement of your torso, that 360 degrees movement as you breathe, the expanding as you breathe in. Imagine you are holding a circle, a horizontal circle. And as you breathe in, that whole circle expands to the side, forward, to the back, and you feel that underneath your hands. Really focus on the thumbs, because yes, the back of the lungs are much bigger than the front of the lungs. Yet, we breathe using our front upper lobes. 80% of our breath goes into 20% of our lungs. So full breathing is step 3 that I talked you through of regulating your breath, finding your more optimal breath, so that more of your lung capacity is used for each and every breath. And we need to do that by our conscious practice now, by freeing up the back of our rib cage, by breathing into the back of the body. And now take your hands down to your legs. Notice how that allows your shoulders to relax. Maintain that posture, maintain that soft belly. And again, connect with the back of your body, the expanding back away from you in the rib cage, and as you breathe in, and the returning back into the body as you breathe out. So yes, the back of the lungs are heavier and denser, and there's more mass to them than the front of the lungs. The back of the lungs are also imbued with a lot more blood vessels, which means that more oxygenation happens in the back of the lungs. But again, remember, we're breathing into the top front lobes of our lungs. So connect with your back breathing. Lying on your belly is an excellent thing to do, Paul. And so any of you who, we can't see you, but you can lie down on your belly, turning your head to one side, making sure your neck is supported. And the act of that is gravity stops the breath entering the front of the lungs and forces more breath to enter the back of the lungs. And you'll be able to feel this inflation through your shoulder blades, through the back of your ribs, around the back of your spine as you breathe in, and then this sinking of your body towards the floor as you breathe out. It's a beautiful thing to do before bed to really allow your nervous system to calm down. I also want to share, with the 12 months we have had with COVID, it has been a remedial practice that doctors have been using. First of all, it was the ventilators that doctors did with the best intentions, but it wasn't very helpful. And so then doctors started to understand, put the patients who are suffering, trying to recover from COVID, on the front of their bodies, because that helps them engage the back of their lungs, which, as we say, has more blood receptors, has more oxygenation. Oxygen is the key requirement for your cells to fight a virus or a disease. And so it's absolutely crucial for us to maintain good health by having well oxygenated cellular body. And that is by breathing deeply. So anytime you feel, it's something that I do with my kids and myself and my client base, anytime you feel like you're catching something, a cold is going around and you start with that sore throat or that heavy head, spend some time lying on the front of your body. Before it becomes a sore throat, lie on your belly and for 10 minutes, really focus on slow, smooth, steady breaths into the back of your body. It will start to shift your immunity.
Oh, that's extraordinarily valuable. Thank you so much, Caroline. I mean, in this first half an hour here, you've given people a year's course. I mean, it's extraordinarily valuable. I mean, I'm so thrilled. Goodness gracious. We have this piece now that can go online that we can say, just watch the first 30 minutes. And for some people, this will be an absolutely transformative practice. So I'm just thrilled that you can share this with us, and particularly that information about the back. I knew that there was more lung tissue in the back, but I didn't realize it was more complex. And what you were saying about COVID patients, I didn't realize that information too. So it just shows you how valuable the breath is. And of course, with COVID, it just made people's breath even more precious. And sometimes I think we underestimate the fact that actually breath is life. If we stop breathing, we die very quickly. And so it's wonderful that we're actually having this connection here, and you are able to share so simply and so delightfully this practice for everyone to participate in.
Well, on that, Paul, let me give you another, now that we're talking lungs, I want to give everyone another piece of information about lungs that I find so fascinating, and I wish the world knew. The top part of your lungs, there's less lung mass, and it is imbued with stress receptors. The lower part of your lungs, there's more lung mass, and it is imbued with relaxation receptors. So you divide your lungs horizontally. There's the top part and the lower part. Don't literally do that. But it's very useful to zone your lungs and then understand, okay, so if my upper lungs are imbued with stress receptors and my lower lungs are imbued with relaxation receptors, and by sending my breath into either of those zones activates those receptors, where do I always send my breath? Well, over 80% of us, and this is a scientific study pre-COVID, over 80% of us are breathing predominantly in our upper chest. And so that was a 2018 study. COVID, let's assume that 95+% of us are breathing predominantly in our upper chest. So we are activating our stress receptors with each and every breath over 20,000 times a day. Now, that doesn't mean that you are white knuckle stressed the whole time. That's not what happens to most of us. Most of us live a fine life, but with low-level stress the whole time. We're edgy. We're feeling despondent, maybe a sense of despair. We're feeling like we lack vitality. We aren't living our vital self. And so I want you to take your hands, all of you, to these two zones in your body and start to unpiece. Am I one of these people that predominantly breathes in my chest? Now, if you look in a mirror at yourself breathing, and if there is any lifting or lowering of your chest and your shoulders, and I'm seeing a little bit of you, Paul, as you breathe, it means that you have cultivated a habit of pulling air into your upper lungs. So we want our chest and our shoulders to be almost totally still as we breathe. And instead have the movement down here in the lower ribs and even lower still in the belly and the back. Because then what you are doing, you're drawing air down through the stress receptors, which is having an excitatory activating effect to you, but you're also moving your breath down through all the relaxation receptors. And through the consequence of both, you feel balanced. You have just the right amount of energy to go for a walk and feel vital, yet you also have that response to being relaxed and calm and being able to sit and read a book and concentrate and being able to fall asleep and sleep really well for 8 hours by breathing correctly, full breathing using the full lung capacity.
Well, that's marvelous. What a fantastic key. And even though I'm relaxed, I'm still tense, as Caroline pointed out. So it would be a very, very interesting exercise if you had the means to do it, that when you felt a stress response come on, something was bothering you, or you got the email that you didn't like, or there was something to agitate or trigger you, to put your hand on your chest immediately, and then just see how you're probably doing exactly what Caroline was telling us, really, in a sense, not to do. And that how you can just say, oh, wait a minute, I'm actually stressing myself out more with my breathing. And just to calm that, see if you can hold steady while you breathe in through the lower belly. And that way, immediately calm yourself down. And not only calm yourself down, but really center yourself. It was interesting that Caroline would tell us to cue us. She said that after we breathed in, inhaled, when we exhaled, to return to center of our body. And it was kind of like, yes, we're returning to the center of our body, but also to our own, perhaps, center of ourselves in terms of our calmness. So that was really beautifully put.
Fantastic. And adding on to that, Paul, for everyone, what I try to install I work with children, I work with full gamut of ages. It's very effective for children, but also effective for everyone I work with, to have this as a cue. Just as you say, Paul, one hand into your chest and one hand into your belly. And any time in the day, but especially at those times when you feel triggered, you take your hands to your belly, you read, hand to your chest, hand to your belly, you read your breath. And then you come into these small circles and your lower hand stays still. So just a circle through your upper hand on your chest. And you say to this area, move less, be still, relax, move less. And then you still that hand. Then you come into circles in your belly, soft circles in your belly. And you say, move more. Be relaxed, but move more. And you start to come into that diaphragmatic breathing, because what happens when we are triggered, we pull in our sphincter muscles and we pull in our abdomen muscle, and we immobilize our diaphragm, which shunts our breathing up to here. Which, if you are being chased by a lion, or if you imagine you are sitting by the proverbial campfire as a tribesman, and you hear rustles in the bushes in the darkness, and you don't know what it is, you need to breathe up here. You need to be ready to flee or fight. But that's not our reality anymore. We're breathing up here too much. So this is your little cue. Move less. Relax. Move more. Relax. I hope that helps you all.
Oh, certainly. I can guarantee that it's helping us all enormously. You had mentioned early on, you said that, well, some of us can lead very good lives, but we still have this underlying level of tension and constriction. And that kind of really read my beads, really, because even though superficially I'm relaxed, underneath that there is that level of tension, which can come from many things. It can come from a kind of an awkward childhood, although I had a very loving childhood. It could come from a kind of almost like a feeling that one's never doing enough, or that one is doing enough, but even though one is doing enough, there's always more to be done. And this idea of presence, where we're with somebody, but we're thinking of something else. We have to be somewhere else, and so a lot of us are not present with each other anymore. And of course, these ubiquitous instruments here, where we're talking to someone, or we get a buzz, or it flashes, or there's this next text to answer, and we're finding, even being with people, that they're constantly distracted. So I'm sure that happens not only in the people you teach, but also in your world and with your children and in your social circle. So how do we deal with that kind of underlying tension, that what I was saying, that we talk a lot about be here now and be present, but probably we're less present and less here now than we've ever been in our history in many ways, because there's so many delightful, I may add, distractions.
Oh gosh, it's a great question. I do not have all the answers, but Paul, really for me, so I have followed the yoga path, and that has so many different jewels to give you more of that, to align yourself with a different way, an older way, a wiser way of living than the trappings of the modern life. There's another study which I found fascinating and illuminating, that every time we see a device, even if the device is dead, it's not illuminated, it's not making any sound, it's not even yours, it spikes your cortisol. And how many devices do we see a day that are on? How many times do we engage with devices? So for me, having explored yoga and the yoga science of the classical yoga path, and we can come on to that, it has many more layers than just stretching your body, just connecting with your breath. There are more signposts that lead you more towards peace than to distraction. For me, most practically in my day-to-day living is my breath. That's why I have focused my practice and my work with others on that. I can feel that I'm tense in my shoulders at the start of this. I've been looking forward to this conversation, but I'm on screen. I want to give people valuable content. I've put pressure on myself with the expectation that I can do that for you all. And so I have benefited from leading you in that breathing practice and doing it for myself. And throughout our conversation, you maybe have noticed, maybe you cannot see, I'm taking my hand to my lower belly and I'm breathing and I'm connected with my perineum, because it's not just the lower part of your lungs that you want to feel moving. It's all the organs beneath it. You want to feel a sense of whole body breathing. And when you see a baby, a naked baby breathing, gosh, their whole body breathes. Their whole body expands as they breathe in and returns in as they breathe out. And it's like becoming a jellyfish. And when I was a guest on your Vital Self evening, I spoke about this idea of tension, this tension that we all have. And I had tension from a very young age. I had a blessed childhood, no abuse, no significant trauma, parents who were loving and present with me. Yet my trauma that I recognize was that I felt no sense of guidance towards peace. I felt no sense of anyone being able to have a conversation with me about how to live a peaceful, calm life, and indeed what that meant to a 4, 5, 6-year-old. And so connecting with my breath at various times throughout the day is my door that opens inner peace. And knowing that on a cellular level, knowing the science of what I experience, and it is supported by science, that is what happens to your nervous system when you breathe like that. Your nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, is like a pendulum. And on one side, there's stress, and on the other side, there's relaxation. And there's never an overlap. You cannot have both at the same time. You're always somewhere on that continuum. And so when I find myself in stress, and that can be a stressful thought, a looping thought that I'm plagued by, that is creating all this tension in me, this compression, because a compressed thought pattern leads to physical compression, tension, which leads to respiratory tension, compression, which leads to more stress. If I can remember to take my hands to my body and visualize becoming so loose and so open like a jellyfish, and breathe into my back of body and feel that expand, and breathe down into my perineum and feel that expand, then I start to manage my nervous system, my emotions, my functioning, my thinking, and I don't lash out with a sharp word or do something that actually pulls me out of peace and into pain.
Well, thank you. So interesting and such a great key for us all. And this idea that when we look at a device, our cortisol spikes, even if it's not our device. I can actually relate to that. And just for our listeners and viewers, that cortisol is our stress hormone. So when our cortisol is going up, that means that we're under stress. So even a small spike can accumulate into much, much more stress in our lives if each time we're looking at a device, it is spiking. So really what Caroline is telling us is, and I'm so appreciating this, that it's not just like, oh, I did breathe, I did that this morning. It's like throughout the day, we can just do this simple exercise of hand on the chest or hand on our belly, or just hand on the belly if we want to be a bit more subtle at a meeting. If we're in a meeting or we're with people, when we used to be with people, which we will be soon again, we can just subtly just put our hand over our belly and just remind ourselves, move more, as Caroline told us, and move less up in the chest area. So I want to come back to the perineum, but before I do want to say, let's just talk a little bit about the arc of your life, because you became this advertising executive, and it sounds like you had a lovely childhood. You weren't particularly a driven person, although maybe you were, you can let us know. But then you experienced burnout. And I just would like people to understand what burnout is and what your experience of it was, and when you realized, wait a minute, this is enough.
I think many of us have experienced something similar. So the arc of my life, as I said, born happy, no issues, so to speak, in terms of safe, happy family. Yet there was a restlessness in me. There was a longing for something more. And I was quite aware as a little child that as I would venture out into the modern world, going to the local town and going to school, and being around other people that weren't my parents, I was confused by the state of humanity. Now, of course, I did not have the words to understand that. And I wasn't able to articulate that to myself or even in my mind. I just felt a sense of distress. Though whilst being very happy and content, there was always in the back of me a tension. And in part, I was the second child, and I followed my sister to primary school. And my sister was a favored student of the teachers. And I arrived, and oh gosh, was I a disappointment. I couldn't sit still in my chair. I was asking many questions. I wasn't getting all the grades. I needed to have more energy from a teacher to help me learn. Whereas my sister was rote learning and a teacher's dream. Whereas I maybe required a little bit more effort. And so I got the messages as a venturing, one of the most significant times I left my sweet bubble of home, ventured out into the world as an independent. I was not acceptable, really. I wasn't quite right. I was too much. Who I naturally was, how I naturally expressed myself was not really very acceptable. And I was aware of that, and it made me tense. And I gathered more and more of those examples as I grew older. And I didn't have within me a self-soother that said, don't worry, you're great as you are, just be who you are. I didn't have that. I wonder how many people do. And so I took it to heart, and I was confused about how to live life as an individual, feeling who I was and expressing my truth, yet feeling also there was a threat in expressing my truth, an unacceptability of it. And so as I grew older, I would take myself off into nature and find a lot of peace playing in the ditch with some sticks and stones, and just feeling like I can be myself here. This feels safe. And other occasions with my parents, I can be myself here. This feels safe. And being with my sister, she's only 16 months older than me, and we were very close. I can be myself here. This feels safe. And then all the other parts of the world did not feel so safe. And there was a pivotal time when I was about 7 or 8. We were in Canada, and I saw a woman standing we were in a walk on a mountain, and she was standing on a beautiful vista, and she was doing a yoga pose. And I had no idea it was a yoga pose, but I saw in her a state of oneness, a state of joy in herself that I was so enticed by. And to me, I remember feeling profoundly, I want what she has. And I asked my parents, what is that? They said, it's yoga. And that planted a seed in me. Yoga, okay. It's something you do. Is it a sport? Is it a form of acting or theatrics? It's a practice that you do to make you feel good. Okay, so the seed was planted. And then I know I'm not talking about advertising yet, Paul, I'm coming to it. Years down the line, fast forward it, I go to university in Scotland, and it starts to become a little bit trendy. Some of my university friends are going to yoga at the town hall on a Sunday night. And I'm resistant because I'm so far disconnected by that point, by the age of late teens, early 20s. I'm so far into a disconnected way of being because I've had so many years of pulling away from that inner child that feels safe, being exactly who she is. And now playing all these other roles, I'm studying business and law at university. And then by the grace of God, I decide, okay, I'm going to change from business and law and study history of art, which was a step closer to my true passion of being around free thinkers who were trying to see the world in a different way. And history of art is a study of that. And so, but after university, not knowing who I am, I was asking everyone, what should I do professionally? I don't know who I am. Guide me. Because I'm confused. Because who I feel like I am, people don't want around them. People are telling me it's not acceptable. So my father said to me, and he's a wonderful man, he said to me, you're business savvy and you're creative. Go into advertising. And so I went into advertising, and it did not suit me at all. It was not aligned with any of my core values. Yet, as I explained, I was in this state of disconnection. I didn't know how to live an authentic life. And so I just thought this was part of life, struggle. A sense of struggle and distress was part of life. So, okay, be successful in advertising, because at least you'll have something to feel proud of and to be applauded about. And so in advertising, I was pretty good at it, yet I didn't put any effort in, because now I realize when you are passionate about something, the effort you put into it is one thing. And if it's hard work and you're not really passionate about it, even if you're putting your energies into it, it never feels like you are really connected with what you're doing. So I was working in advertising, working hard, and yet not valuing any of these conversations I was having about how to sell Heinz tomato ketchup and how to take a creative idea and make it more appealing so more people buy it. Now, of course, advertising is bigger than that, and there are people who have creative vision and want to change the world in it. But I was jaded by feeling this is all nonsense. This is not aligned with who I truly am. And so my burnout was feeling depressed about that, feeling totally uninspired in the way I was spending most of the hours of my life. And to soothe those uncomfortable feelings, I ate a lot of sugar. It was all about how can I get that work done and have a plate of biscuits. Because when I eat the plate of biscuits, then those tense feelings I have, they just fade away for a moment. And sugar was my drug of choice to shift me out of my sadness and distress about not living in alignment. And so advertising, I was doing that for 5 years and feeling self-destructive and doing things that I knew I were not at my core value. They didn't represent who I truly was, yet I kept doing them. And I kept being in this place of tension until I finally said to myself, okay, I've saved enough money. I'm going to check out and I'm going to study yoga. And I did it. I gave up my job and I took, in fact, what I actually said, I've saved up enough money to have 2 years at being able to support myself. And I'm going to just see what I choose to spend my time doing. And I chose to spend my time walking in nature, cooking, reading, and doing yoga. And I I got a lot from all of those things, but I was so passionate when I started to scrape back the surface of what yoga was in the yoga studios. I was fortunate enough to go to yoga studios and have some teachers that were all about the sweaty practice, and then have some teachers that were a bit about the moving body and a bit about these other kind of mystical things that I thought, wow, there's something in that. And then I had a couple of experiences where these strange people would come in, having traveled through India and with medicine doctors in South America, and they would come in and they would show me these age-old wise practices that were not trendy and were not, I was the student at the end of class in the corner huddling with these people, and they were telling me the things that no one else really had the space for, no one else really wanted to know about. And I could never be satiated. I wanted to know more and more. Tell me more about some of these classical paths and some of these techniques that shift you to closer alignment. And that became my journey. I followed them. I followed the idea of making a pilgrimage and went to India, and for long stretches of time, returned there frequently, and then entered a phase of taking the wisdom of these age-old approaches and trying to make them accessible for people, specifically in London, which is where I was working, which is where I was living, and I'd started to teach yoga by this point. So trying to take some of that ancient wisdom and ingrain it, pepper it, sprinkle it through these classes I was teaching of 30 people who were, again, in their burnout and just soldiering forth in the life that they thought they should be living, yet would come to my classes because they wanted, in 90 minutes or 60 minutes, make me feel good. So I'd give them the things that they thought they needed, and I would pepper in these other wise jewels that I had been taught. And from there, I gained, then people, me as a teacher, were huddling with me in the corner of the room, asking me for more direction on what they could do to feel more aligned. And that has been my life's purpose. I plan on teaching it forevermore, continue to learn, bringing in more practices that I don't know, but I experience them in my life. I assimilate them in my enlightenment. I share them with others. May I continue to learn and continue to share.
Well, I'm so fascinated by this kind of arc that you're sharing with us, because you've kind of been through it all, really. I mean, in terms of this kind of pathway that started out with business and law, and you end up being a yoga teacher. And I think the beauty of what you experienced is that you can relate to so many other people, right? I mean, because it's not like you went straight into becoming a yoga teacher and you bypassed this life experience, but that you found yourself in a job that you didn't care for. And I presume that in that advertising job, because you weren't caring for it too much, like you said, you were kind of enjoying biscuits, the cookie festival each night, lots of sugar and stuff like that. So there was a way of doing it. What other ways did this kind of stress kind of rear its head? Did you get sick in any ways, or did you find yourself listless, or these other kind of fatigued, or almost even depressed? Was any of that kind of like a turning point before you kind of just said enough?
Sure. I think throughout my life, I have been angry about this tension in me, about the state of humanity that I saw it, about the lack of meaningful conversation that I craved. I didn't want to talk so much about, I was happy to talk about the human aspects of life, but I also wanted to talk about feelings and fears and everyone's edge. And yet I had parents who were not versed with having those conversations. So I didn't get those conversations until my teens, my late teens, when I had to go out and I had to find people who would be able to feed me with this hunger that I had of meaningful conversation, intimate conversation. And so I think that created a foundation of anger really around that. When you are hungry, there's that term hangry. You're so hungry, you're angry. It doesn't just have to be for food. What are you hungry for? Are you hungry for intimacy? Are you hungry for someone to come home to you that you share your home with, and they look you in the eye and they keep looking because they want to know you deeply? Maybe you're hungry for that. Or maybe you're hungry for space. Someone's too in your face. Someone's wanting more from you all the time. Someone's wanting to change you. Maybe that makes you hangry. You're hungry for space. So I think it came out in anger, and I wouldn't have physical fights with people, but my rhetoric, sometimes I would be, so I have a sister who's 16 months older than me. Sometimes I would be angry when she succeeded. I would be angry about her blessings. And that to me was so misaligned with my true value. Because my true value is someone who loves people and believes that every person is at their center, just as beautiful as the next person, and kindness and love and gratitude and sharing and giving is all of our natural nature. And so my frustration with how I was living, my lack of alignment and my hangriness for intimate, meaningful conversation, meaningful connection, came out, in feeling jealous of people, wanting my friends to have a great life, but not greater than mine. I'd be happy for you if you didn't have much more than me. And so that was a really uncomfortable way for me to live. It felt deeply destructive and unwholesome. And so, yes, sugar was eating in a destructive way is something that many of us can relate to. That compulsive act of eating, you've got a feeling and you don't know how to articulate it, you don't know how to sit with it, it's uncomfortable. You're oftentimes not even aware of the feeling. It's just sitting within you in this tense form, and you're in some form of tension. You don't quite know how to get out of it, so you distract yourself with a compulsive something to eat, or a compulsive scroll through your phone, or a compulsive drink, or whatever it is. So for me, that would be one of my coping mechanisms. And then also, this sense of kind of anger at the world.
Well, it really ties quite well, I think, into both areas that I want to definitely touch on in this second part of our talk here, in the second hour of our talk. The first one is the perineum or the perineum. And as you mentioned, it is the point on the bottom of our pelvic floor between the anus and the genital area organs. And what's so fascinating about this, you can just even tell talking about it, I'm getting tongue-tied. And also, it's just like, it just is this world of trouble in many ways for a lot of people, because for a lot of reasons. And it's where we defecate, it's where we have sex, it's where we eliminate, all of those kind of things. And here it is. And a lot of us are completely out of touch with it. And what I'd like you to address with us is that it is also a diaphragm. We have the respiratory diaphragm, which is below the ribs here. And we've talked a lot about that, and the action of the diaphragm is like when we exhale, it actually relaxes and domes upwards, and when we inhale, it actually spreads out. Hence, this elbow movement is on purpose. Caroline was telling us, breathe back and forth, but also from the sides, 360 degrees. So when this diaphragm spreads on an inhale, our ribs actually move out, and we can feel it in the sides of our body, which is something we all really need to be doing. But so we inhale and then we exhale. At the same time as we inhale, this pelvic floor of ours, which I think is more, the dome is the other way. Can't quite get my rotation of the hands here. The pelvic floor, as Caroline mentioned, is holding all of our organs, right? I mean, it's a lattice work of connective tissue, because as you know from a pelvis, there's just a hole there. So underneath this hole, this pelvic diamond, so to speak, is a lattice work. So speak to us a little bit about what you found with a lot of people with the pelvic floor. Just a little bit about this as well. We have the bladder down there as well, but also it's a way that the women actually release the child, right? It's where the baby comes out. And interestingly enough, one of the things that I learned is that in yoga, there's something called the Mula Bandha, which is the bandhas or the locks, or these areas where if as a yoga practitioner, you'll need to have control of in a certain way to control some of the movements. And in certain forms of yoga, like Ashtanga yoga, they're very, very much focused on keeping the Mula Bandha kind of tense and engaged. And what happens is that a lot of women, Ashtanga practices, can't have a natural childbirth because they can't let go of that area. They can't relax that area. And I think that for men as well, it's the area of the prostate. And if we don't get mobility in that area, then we don't get any blood flow into an area that doesn't have much blood flow whatsoever. There's very little movement there. So we tend to get very tight there. When we're sitting down, we're tight in the pelvic floor area. So I'm very big on the pelvic floor, and just allowing that when we breathe, we actually can mobilize, for want of a better word, or perhaps even feel that. So it's something we've never spoken about, Caroline, and I'm just interested in your point of view and perspective, and if you can provide any assistance.
Of course, I'd love to. Yes, it's such a key area. So I talk about the perineum a lot, and I always say the perineum is the space between the anus and the genitals. Anus and genitals. Anus and genitals. I know people, oh gosh, stop saying those words. But we need to connect with every part of our bodies. We all have a perineum, and it is the space, the flat space between your anus and your genitals. And it is so key. When you look at children navigating complex emotions, and there is a big, strong emotional surge within them, they squeeze their buttocks together, and everyone squeeze your buttocks together. as if you're clenching, and you tighten your perineum and your belly pulls in. So the lower half of your trunk becomes compressed and tense. Now, unless that child is given a lot of space afterwards to completely allow that tightening to return into the opposite, then there's a little bit of tightening that stays, a little bit of tightening that stays, a little bit of tightening that stays. And over time, the little bit of tightening that stays creates this chronic tightening where we close these parts down of our body. And there's shameful language about this part, from the navel down. People feel largely most comfortable feeling disconnected with it. But that leads to all sorts of problems. Physical problems, emotional problems, spiritual problems, in so many different ways we could look at that. So the perineum is important that we have movement. So just as we have a tightening through it at times when we're feeling like we need to brace ourselves or navigate a strong emotion or are under tension, we also want to feel an expanding quality to it when we are feeling relaxed or joyful or happy or at ease. Yet we don't talk about it with that language. So I'm going to lead you in a practice to connect with how your breath can open up this space. Before I do, I want to talk about it being a diaphragm. So a diaphragm is a dome of muscles that when it is relaxed, it is in dome shape. And when it is in tension, it flattens down. And you can imagine it. I like to visualize you can visualize an umbrella. So an umbrella is open and relaxed, and then like a cocktail umbrella, it's open and then it flattens down. Okay. And so the diaphragm, the principal diaphragm you have, sits about here in the body. And just as Paul said, when it is relaxed, it is up like this. And that is when you exhale. And the reason it is up like this when you exhale is that it is pushing your lungs into compression to facilitate your exhale, the breath leaving the lungs. The diaphragm rises up, the lungs like a sponge are squeezed, more air leaves your body. As you inhale, the diaphragm flattens down. And that draws your lungs longer to create this negative volume within you that pulls more air in. But for those who have a tight lower perineum and the tightness in the buttocks, we create a tightness in the whole of your abdomen, and your range of movement of the diaphragm becomes very little, like this. The range of movement in this diaphragm, your respiratory diaphragm, can be on average 10 centimeters. That's a large range of movement, but most of us, it's just moving at about 2 to 3 centimeters as you breathe in and breathe out. So again, ideally, you'd be inhaling and your diaphragm would be flattening down like this as you inhale, and as you exhale, your diaphragm relaxes up like this to a range of 10 centimeters. Now, you also have a diaphragm in your throat, but we won't talk about that now. We'll go to the diaphragm in your perineum. And actually, I work with it, Paul. It's the same movement. So as you inhale, it flattens down. And I'm going to guide you in this, but I want you all to see the visuals. The reason it flattens down, the perineum at the base of your body, we can't see you. Put your hands down there and find that flat ridge between your anus and your genitals. That's your perineum. And as you breathe in, your upper diaphragm, this diaphragm flattens down, stretching your lungs longer and pushing the organs, the visceral organs, down, which is why your belly reaches forward with diaphragmatic breathing, and your organs push down and push into your perineum. So you should feel your perineum flattening down as you breathe in. And as you breathe out, you feel your perineum diaphragm arcing up, moving up into the body. Let me guide you in that. So everybody closing your eyes. Take one hand to your chest, one hand to your lower belly. Make circles with your chest, hand, and say move less. Shoulders drop and be still. Move less in the chest as I breathe. Feel less movement of the breath underneath your chest hand. And then let that hand be still and take some circles through your lower belly. Have more movement of your breath in your lower hand. Now, still your lower hand and breathe in and feel your belly expand forward and your mid-back expand back. And as you breathe out, everything moves in towards center. Follow your own slow pace. You don't need to follow mine. Breathing in, your belly expands forward, your rib cage expands back. 360-degree expansion away from your center as you breathe in, and a 360-degree returning back in towards your center as you breathe out. Okay, now bringing your awareness down through your body, behind the chest hand, down through the lungs, down through your respiratory diaphragm, down through the organs of your body, passing behind your belly hand, down into the bowl of your pelvis. Yeah, Paul, you took your chest hand down. Everybody do that. That's a great idea. Take both hands down and let your hands be a little bit wide on your belly, as if you're holding your belly with your hands. And feeling the belly expand into your hands as you breathe in. Feeling the belly return away from your hands as you breathe out. But make sure that that is an effortless motion. And for some of us, this can be really tough because, as I said, we've got used to holding this area in tight. In part for reasons of having an socially acceptable body form. Hold your belly in. Don't let anyone see it. That's what we say to each other and to ourselves. So it might feel difficult to release your belly fully as you breathe in, but try to do it. Really let your belly ripple forward into your hands as you breathe in. Let your belly return backwards as you breathe out. Notice the messages you give yourself about your body. And again, remember, I believe your natural nature is total love and kindness. So feel your beautiful belly expanding forward as you breathe in, returning backwards as you breathe out. And so your awareness is behind your hands on your belly. And now bring your awareness further down. Go down towards that space of feeling desire to urinate. So move down through that bladder space. You can feel it. You might feel a sexual tingle there as well. Or you might not feel anything. That's interesting too. But move down to that space of your perineum. And as you breathe in, feel a downward flattening as your organs are pushed down by your respiratory diaphragm, halfway up your body. It's pushing your organs down as you breathe in, and you feel this pressure, this massage down into your perineum as you breathe in. Feel a sense of spreading, expanding down in your perineum as you breathe in. And as you breathe out, feel a sense of lifting up as your belly draws in and and your respiratory diaphragm lifts up and your lungs shorten and the air leaves your body, you create space for your perineum to lift up. So as you breathe in, your perineum, it feels heavy and flattening down and blooming open and widening. And as you exhale, the perineum draws up into the body as if it's finding your center. Breathing in, it is expanding, it is growing, it is alive. And breathing out, it is returning in. And as you stay here with your eyes closed, you can think about every breath cycle you take has an inhale and an exhale. And your inhale is the first thing you do when you enter this world, because it is your activating, it is your enlivening. It is your exciting breath. It gives you life, your inhale. And feel that in your perineum, this expanding, this aliveness, this stretching, this vibrancy as you breathe in. And the last thing you do in this world is you take an exhale. You return to something else. And as you exhale, feel this drawing in, this drawing up. This final relaxing inwards in your body. And then just finally drop your arms down, let your arms relax wherever they want to be. Feel the heaviness in your shoulders, yet the lightness that runs through the center of your body, from your perineum all the way up through to the crown of your head. This central rising as the rest of your body hangs down, being with your moving body breathing. You're breathing through your nose with your tongue up and wide. You're breathing diaphragmatically with your belly expanding forward as you breathe in, and returning backwards as you breathe out. You're breathing full lung capacity breaths, feeling the expansion of your inhale in the back of your body, the return of your exhale in the back of your body, feeling the movement, the expanding down in your perineum of your inhale, the returning upwards of your perineum of your exhale. And then your breath is refined, it is slow, smooth, steady, and so light that now all of these movements you are aware of, you still feel them, but they become so subtle, they take on a hypnotic quality to them. Your inner awareness, calmed in the flow of your breath. And now lastly, a couple of key triggers that I want you to do to go deeper. I want you to feel like the corners of your mouth can smile back into your face. The corners of your mouth smile back into your face. And then the backs of your eyes gaze back into your head. And then the whole of your face smiles back into you. And that allows you to come into a state of contentment, of ease with yourself, of alignment. And then before you open your eyes, to come out of the practice, I want you to, first of all, let the tongue tickle the roof of your mouth. Feel the sensitivity of your touch return. Tongue tickling the roof of your mouth. Maybe feeling the sensitivity of taste as well. And then let your fingers find your thumbs and see if you can feel the prints of your skin. And then let your eyes rotate behind your closed lids as if you're looking up to your eyebrows. You're looking to the left, you're looking down, you're looking to the right. And then slowly opening your eyes and let your optical nerves start to drink in your peripheral vision first of all. And then slowly bring it forward to the light directly in front of you. Beyond your screen, somewhere distant. And then bring your vision closer. Let your vision come closer and into the screen again. So that was a practice of connecting with the perineum, the whole of the body, more of the supple body. It also was a practice of what in yoga we call pratyahara, which is withdrawing the senses, taking it inwards, and then doing the reverse, allowing the senses to move outwards, calming your optical nerves, because we are in front of a screen so much that by closing our eyes and feeling like our gaze can be back inwards into the darkness within our heads, rotating through our eyes helps to calm those nerves.
Well, such an invaluable process you took us through there. And I'm hoping that everybody can just really understand the pure gold that you gave us, Caroline, in such a clear and articulated way, that I just want to just go over some of the key points so people can really practice this. And of course, this will be available, I believe, on YouTube. Anna, who's our organizer here, our showrunner, can just let us know exactly when it'll be available, and by the end, hopefully, can tell you. But this is something to go back to and to really practice this, what Caroline just showed us. Because again, just as we did at the beginning, this idea that the breath is all the way around. It's 360 degrees. And we're looking at the screen, we look in the mirror. So a lot of us just see ourselves as a 2D figure, a two-dimensional figure, a flat figure, in other words. And we've looked at photographs of ourselves. So we don't really have that sense of us being 3 dimensions. Of course, we can always turn to the side, but really that the feeling sense of us is always kind of a flat 2-dimensional figure. So it's really important that we feel ourselves more as being around, that we have a back body as well as a front body. I mean, we think of our hearts are here, but also the heart is right in the center of our body. And again, the heart center is 360 degrees. So we have this all around kind of approach. And so that when we breathe, we're not only breathing with the front of our body, but the sides and the back. And that this allows us to be also more stable. And Caroline took us through that in a very step-by-step approach. And then the idea that we have this perineum, which we're all kind of nervous about. And as she said, well, everybody just touched their perineum, nobody's watching. I kind of went, oh, I better do it. And I went, oh, maybe people are watching. But it's just like I realized how little that I actually touched that area in terms of even just my movement practices. So that I'm very, very aware of that as a very important diaphragm, and yet this unwillingness to touch areas of our body, not as a kind of a problem in terms of not an area we particularly want to be touching all the time, but just the fact that we're repelled by it or shy about it creates that contraction in, which creates more tightness there. And, I'm of the opinion that we need to love every part of ourselves, right? It is all us, and all our cells are connected. We came from one cell. All of us came from one cell that divided. So every part of us really, of course, we have other parts that have joined us, bacteria and things like that, not all of which are bad. As those of you in the Vital Self program have heard me talk a lot about the microbiome. Nonetheless, our cellular structure is all us. And so, in a sense, it must all be loved and all be embraced and incorporated. So this area of tightness gives rise to so many problems in our mobility, our ability to move through life, in the functioning of our eliminations organs, the colon, the rectum, the bladder, the prostate, and also, of course, the lower belly being a huge area for women in many ways, where the uterus is, and all these things. This support of the perineum, this lower pelvic floor, is so vital in all of this, and I can't stress it enough. So the fact that Caroline wasn't shy about bringing our attention to it, I can't thank you enough, Caroline. Thank you so much for doing that, so that we can, no hang-ups, just allow ourselves to feel that when we breathe in, that this area is flattening, and is also, as we breathe out, is doming up. And what I particularly liked about what Caroline was saying as well is that she was saying, let things hang down, but also feel this impulse from our perineum to our crown. And this is absolutely fascinating to me, and has lots of implications in not only Eastern approach, where we're going from our root chakra, right, our base chakra, to our top chakra in the chakra system, but also in the Chinese system as well, where the perineum has a very, very specific acupuncture point, and the crown as well, and very, very important points, and the connectivity between them. And I was just wondering, Caroline, if you could just tell us how we can benefit from the perineum crown connection in terms of postural support and actually poise, for want of a better word, and also, in a sense as well, if you our general health and well-being.
Yes, let me talk to that point. Before we do, I want to go a little bit further into this low area of our bodies. And why not? We all have it. So what I found when I went and studied yoga with yogis in India, there's no shame about talking about the anus and the genitals and this part and that part. And that's very refreshing. So I try to use those words a lot, because to try to burst that bubble of anxiety people have when they hear it or when they try to connect with it. We need to remember that muscle atrophy happens when we hold something so tight chronically that it doesn't quite function anymore. And the healthiest muscles, which relates to our breathing, are ones that expand and return and expand and return, which is why the healthiest respiratory diaphragm, which informs the whole of our nervous system, and as I said at the beginning of our conversation, every aspect of your mental and physical health, it is informed by how healthy your respiration is. We want every breath we take to be an exercise for our respiratory diaphragm. So a full stretching down as we breathe in. It moves in that full 10 centimeter range. And then a total relaxing as you breathe out. It moves all the way up. And the same, we want that same motion in our perineum every breath. We have over 20,000 times a day to have a little exercise opportunity for these parts of our body that keep us vital. And so I want you to really understand where your perineum is. I asked you to touch that space. Maybe some of you did. I encourage you to do so. But what the yogis do is they talk about something called Ashwani Mudra. Have you heard of that, Paul?
No, I haven't.
It translates to horse's rear. And I want you to all connect with it. Okay, so there are 3 key mudras down around the perineum. And mudra means a place where parts come together. So you can connect it as a physical part of your body that has energy moving around it. So you have your perineum, the space between your anus and your genitals. Then you have Ashwani Mudra, which is at your anus. Okay. And I want you all to try to pucker your anus, squeeze your anus in without pulling in your perineum or your urinary tract. Try to isolate it just to that point. And it becomes very interesting how able you are to connect with that, just that small zone. And then move forward, bypass the perineum, we will come back to it, move forward to your urinary tract. And try to engage that. So squeeze it and release it. Squeeze it and release it without engaging your perineum or your anus. So this is like holding back the flow of urine. And see how able you are to isolate that. And then the perineum is the point between those two. And go there now. Try to squeeze the perineum without engaging your anus and without engaging your urinary tract. How able you are to engage and release that area independently of all the areas around. And as Paul says, this is crucial. It is so crucial that every cellular mass in our body has life in it, has movement in it, has our attention. So now that we've gone a little bit further into exploring this area without any shame, with just joy, knowing that we all have these same parts, now thinking about the perineum to the crown line. So the perineum to the crown of the head, there is a line that could run through your bodies connecting the two. And in yoga, they call that sushumna. Now, it is not a physical line, it's more of an energetic channel. And you can connect with it anytime. If you do yoga or not, anyone, anywhere can connect with it by feeling a sense of your perineum. And from there, feeling a sense of upward lift through your body, through the center of your body. So not where my hands are at the front of my body, but imagining the line that runs through your center, just forward of your spinal column, all the way up to the crown of the head. And imagine there's a golden thread on the crown of your head, and it draws you even taller. And so you feel this internal rising through your center. Now, the key here for posture is just the internal rising through your center. Imagine the rest of your body is like a heavy velvet cloak hanging on that rising line. Hanging. So there's this sense of release. There's this sense of relaxation through your shoulders, through your arms, through your legs, through the front of your body, through the back of your body. And when you find a balance between those two forces, that upward rising energy that runs from your perineum all the way up to the crown and higher, rising up, and then the tissues of the gross body relaxing down, then you come into your best posture, your healthiest posture, where all the organs in your body have this balance between this upward force and this downward relaxation. So they have this balance between being activated and being relaxing, and your body comes into alignment. The shortcut to that is, as I've said a few times now, lifting up through the center point of your chest and the back of your skull. Do that as often as you can, many times throughout the day. And then once you feel that lift up, release your arms down, let your shoulders drop, and relax your belly to diaphragmatic breathing. Does that answer your question, Paul, or do you need me to go into anything in more depth?
No, that's quite brilliant. I'm hoping that everybody's really taking good note of this, and this perineum connection with the crown, I think, is such an important study, really, for those people who are doing Qigong or any of the Eastern martial arts will recognize that many times in Tai Chi, one's given the instruction, feel that the body is being suspended from above, and you constantly have this crown aspect here. And but a lot of people don't understand this perineum and the importance of it, and because people just don't want to go there. And again, thank you, Caroline, for your courage and just being unashamedly just like talking about it. And it's a natural thing, which of course that it is. Interestingly enough, when you mentioned the Sushumna, this energetic spine, the Vital Self program, in a few weeks, I'm going to be doing a Vital Self 2 class called the Subtle Body. And the Sushumna, of course, is part of the subtle body or the energy body, which informs our physical bodies. So very, very part of the wholeness of what we do. As John Rogers says, there's just one energy. So, this oneness is something that we're always coming into. So thank you for bringing that up. But again, if we can feel this perineum, and if we can connect it with the crown and realize that there's this upward movement as the rest of our body hangs down, we have just there an important practice that we can go to at any time. And as Caroline says, for center of the chest, right on the sternum, right? Center of the chest, and then lift the occiput, the back of the head, and lift them together.
An inch above the occiput.
Okay.
So the occiput is the divot where the spine meets the skull. So about here.
And we're lifting both the sternum and this back part.
Yes. With the same uplift, whilst keeping the chin slightly in. So a pathology of the human posture is we say sit tall and we project our chin up. But that shortens the vagus nerve that runs at the back of the neck, which is so crucial for your nervous system balance and blood supply to the head. So with the cue of lifting through the back of the skull and the center of the chest, if you really connect with just those two areas lifting, everything else stays in rightful alignment. And if you are someone who has a habit of projecting through the chin, if you really connect with the cue of the back of the head, that will correct itself. You'll start to feel this lengthening through the back of the neck, which is good for relieving all of your tension. And you'll find this spacious body where all of your functioning can find its regulation, can find its vitality.
I can't stress how important this is to everybody, because what's happening is that we're finding as a society that teenagers are having neck problems that normally people get in their 60s, their 70s, and their 80s because of this forward head posture. We're all kind of looking forward like this at our devices all the time, and that puts enormous strain on our bodies. And if you think about our senses, like our eyes, our ears, our hearing, our seeing, our smelling, our tasting, so much goes on in this head area of ours. And what supplies it? This area here. This area here is what is supplying all of the nutrients and the blood and everything that goes out, and the nerves. Of course, it goes down the other way too, to this area. So you can imagine that the more cut off it is, the more it's being deprived of this nutrition and this flow. And so the more open we can have it, the more it's going to assist our seeing, our hearing, our senses. And so please don't underestimate this. And even if you have spent a little bit of time like this at the computer, just take a moment every hour, every half an hour, whenever you can, because many of us are talking on the phone like I am now. I mean, I'm talking to you now, right? It doesn't take too much for me. I can continue to talk while I'm lifting here. And, it's not too much of a distraction. And when it becomes a habit, I can just do it automatically. And boom, I've reset myself. And eventually, that feels much more comfortable and natural than this does. I mean, for those of you who are like this all day, this feels natural. That's why we stay there. It's like, okay, this is our default position. As we can get into the habit of having this more our default position, then that would be just worth the price of admission alone for this class. And then, of course, more subtle, this perineum crown is actually a much, much subtler point, and as again goes into Eastern medicine practices and acupuncture and all of those kind of areas, and yogic practice as well. Perineum is again the mula bandha. The mula means root, right? You have the Muladhara, the root chakra. So we have the root down there, and the bandha is the lock. It's just like what we engage in to create stability. And the problem is that when we get uptight, right, when we go like this, we're trying to create stability. When we tense up, we create stability. And Caroline has been giving us a different. We don't have to do this to create stability. In fact, it doesn't create stability at all. It just feels like it's stable. And Caroline's given us a whole nother way to create stability. And being in touch with this pelvic floor, if we were together physically, I would show you how it would bring stability to your body that you wouldn't know. I would do it by having you stand, and I would have you not be engaged in your pelvic floor, and I would push on you, and you'd probably just roll over like this. As soon as your pelvic floor is engaged in the correct way, I'll push on you, and you'll be much, much more solid. I mean, you'll feel more stable, and you'll go, I'm not doing anything except being engaged. So this is really, really important. And this idea, I'm hoping that things have opened up for you in terms of this diaphragm, that we've heard about two diaphragms, the respiratory diaphragm and the pelvic floor diaphragm. Now, depending on who you talk to, there's more diaphragms. And actually, it may well be worth, I'm very interested to see how you receive this little conversation that Caroline and I have had today. If you want to have more, please give us your feedback. And I would love to have Caroline more back, because I really didn't go into what I was so looking forward to, which was her India journey. But I'm going to save that for another time, so that I'm still kind of chomping at the bit here to explore that with you. The moment you set foot in India and going to the ashrams and finding these great Indian teachers, I do want to explore that further. And perhaps looking at these other diaphragms, you've already given one away, the throat would be another one, and how that interacts. But I don't think we have time for that, unfortunately. We're coming towards the close of this enlightening talk. absolutely marvelous. I do want you, Caroline, to talk about the breath method, how people could get a hold of you, and what you could offer, whether you can give your email address and how they can contact you, the breath method, what they can expect if they were to go to thebreathmethod.com, and anything else you want to say about yourself going forward.
Oh, thank you, Paul. I've had a great time. These 2 hours have flown by. So yes, the breath method. So I moved to Los Angeles in December. I have been living in Singapore. I had a breathing clinic there where I worked with hundreds of people to help them regulate their breathing. We all have common breath dysfunctions. Doing the 4 steps of breathing that I guided you through at the beginning of our session is a cure-all. It will regulate everyone's breathing to be more optimal and functional for them, so you have greater nervous system balance. And what does that mean? It means that you start to repattern your day-to-day breathing so that more of those 20,000 breaths serve you in nourishment and balance rather than deplete you by creating stress in your system. So I work with people individually to do that. There are other nuances to breath dysfunctions that I can help diagnose you. If you come onto the Breath Method website, you will see that it leads you to my app. So the Breath Method app, there's lots of free content. There's also membership, but you can just go on and have an explore for yourself. You get a daily breathing practice that follows those 4 steps of breathing, fleshed out. So it's a 10-minute practice, and we go into different routes of exploring the diaphragmatic breath, the full back breathing, peppered in with scientific facts for those who are interested. And it's all based on the science. My experience of the ancient wisdom and experiential breathing, but also the science of what works for all of us. So there's daily breathing practices, and then there's also specialist practices for people who need to specifically de-stress or relax, focus, get energy, or go to sleep. Because your breathing is so magnificent, you can shape it in a multitude of different ways. And each way you shape your breathing has a different outcome. So you learn that on the Breath Method, and you can learn that in private client sessions with me. Feel free. This is my life passion. You asking me for help helps me. So please feel free to email me directly at caroline@thebreathmethod.com. Again, that's my name, Caroline @thebreathmethod.com. I'm always fascinated to hear about people's breathing journeys, how they feel like they could improve their breathing, how they feel like they can use yoga to improve their life. This is what I've been doing for 20 years. If you feel like I could help you, then please do reach out.
Well, thank you, Caroline. And just to let everybody know that Caroline, in this segment here, has provided us with a lifetime of practice, and she hasn't held anything back whatsoever. So don't feel that you have to go on to find some other secrets. In some ways, that Caroline has just revealed all the secrets to us in many ways. But if you want to go deeper and have a more personal experience, then please get in touch with Caroline. And one thing I do want to recommend, because Caroline, for the Vital Self class, presented to us a Yoga Nidra exercise. And this Yoga Nidra, I have to say, just really transformed the class, because many people in the class had difficulty with sleeping. And it's a form of anxiety for a lot of people when they can't go to sleep at night. There's a lot of people, society-wise, now I'm talking culturally-wise, who are on medication to go to sleep. And yet Yoga Nidra, which means yoga sleep, is a way into total relaxation and also reaching a level of rest which is actually deeper than sleep. So, Caroline, if you can, we don't have time for you to explain what Yoga Nidra is, but at least I think on Sunday evenings, you do offer a Yoga Nidra class online. So perhaps you can just tell people how they can connect with that.
Sure. Further to what Paul said, Yoga Nidra is a beautiful practice. You can, anyone of any age, any health profile, can practice it any time in the day. So it's a wonderful thing to get you deeply peaceful and ready for sleep, but it is a form of rest. So just as you maybe at 10 in the morning want to sit down and have a cup of tea, you could also lie down and do a Yoga Nidra. It will revitalize you and is deeply soothing. So yes, I do a Sunday night Yoga Nidra. You can find it at Eventbrite, which is eventbrite.com. Eventbrite, and you just search Yoga Nidra with Caroline Gamble. It's every Sunday evening at 6 p.m. Pacific time. So that's 9 p.m. Eastern time. Other people in the world, I'm sorry if your time zones don't suit that, but I will do more in the future, and it's for all. Please join.
Marvelous. I highly recommend it, and please, look up Yoga Nidra. Most people don't know it. When I mention Yoga Nidra to people, I think they just think it's another yoga practice. We're so conditioned that yoga is hatha yoga, or let's put it, I like to call it acrobatic yoga or gymnastic yoga, where people just move themselves into all of these asanas, these positions that seem to be way beyond most individuals. I would love to have Caroline back because we could do a lot of yoga postures actually in our chair. And so I would love to explore that, just like we explored the postural aspects of things. But also, Caroline's study is in other yogas. It's not about hatha yoga. Hatha yoga is just one of what has been called the 8 limbs of yoga. So there's 7 other yoga practices that are not physical movement, as like in the asanas or postures that you see, the asanas. So there's a lot to explore there. And also just 2 of the most valuable yoga postures that exist are the Tadasana, which is the standing posture, and the Shavasana, which is the laying down posture. Believe it or not, those are the 2 most valuable. So we don't have to kind of contort ourselves into pretzels to get value from yoga, but there's also very deep meditative areas, all of which, please give your comments. Very happy to have Caroline back with us as we explore diaphragms, yoga, and how to do it in a chair and in our daily lives, and Caroline's journey to India, which I'm so looking forward to. Thank you so much, Caroline. I can't thank you enough. It's been so clear, so charming. Thank you so much for joining us and being so generous with all that you've given us.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to know you. I have not seen any other faces, but I feel your energy, and I look forward to part 2.
Part 2, there was a question on arthritis. So for the person that asked that, we'll take a look at that as well, and other things that perhaps yoga can assist us with. And huge thanks to Anna Sugai, to Stella Estevez, to our translator Maria Jose Marignon, to Paul Wilcox, our sound technician, and thank you, and to Julie Lurie as well, who's behind the scenes helping make all of this work and pull together. So thank you all, and thank you all for joining us, and be well, and I hope that we can meet with Caroline again very shortly. All the best.
Love.
Thank you.